I think there is great need for us, those who are involved, those who live in Jammu and Kashmir, to look at the model of development that we've adopted really. And we have to ask ourselves that fundamental question, is this model of development sustainable? For one, there have been certain things that do get into the news. There are certain things that do not get into the news. There are certain things everybody notices, but for some reason do not comment upon. Now, one of the things that we notice and we do not comment upon is something that has been now visible to a lot of people. We keep on complaining that our summers are getting hotter and our winters are getting colder. And it's not really surprising that if you look at the manner in which we have been building cities, there is practically nothing for greenery. We've been turning what was admittedly Kandi land into cement forests. As a result, during summers, this concrete and cement has a tendency to absorb all the heat and release it in the evening, thus making our lives extremely miserable. And we try to compensate for it by installing air conditioners and making the situation even worse. So, we therefore use energy to deal with energy, namely heat. Now, this is something that we have to look back and figure out whether this is sustainable or not. We need a building code which ensures that if somebody is building a house, he is also paying adequate attention to greenery. There is provision for things like rainwater harvesting, rooftop harvesting. So, we do not have to depend entirely on the municipal networks and the municipal corporations for water. We have water on our doorsteps by our own enterprise. Now, this is something that everybody seems to notice, but nobody seems to comment upon. What about those things that we seem to not to notice, which at least the fourth estate should notice and not comment upon? And I'm referring to what I've just been, I've been told about the death of 20,000, 25,000 odd Pashmina goats as a result of them not getting food, and that happened because the winter was somewhat longer than we had expected. And that leads us to a fundamental question. Is our agricultural model, or is our primary model, the model of economy that depends on the primary sector, is that sustainable? We've been practicing agriculture. Have we been taking any care to ensure that it is sustainable? The tragedy is, in Jammu and Kashmir, it would appear that nobody seems to have bothered. Agriculture is primitive. Whenever it is not primitive, it has a tendency to be unsustainable. So, when we are planting rice in a place like Pura with availability of water, it's one thing. But we also plant rice in other areas. Do we take care to ensure that water is available? And the problem is that we do not. Now, we now need some sort of a campaign to make people aware of these particular issues. One is, of course, the paternalistic campaign, which, you have news spots telling people to be more green. And nobody knows what it is to be more green. But there are other ways to bring in this message as well. Now, one of the ways, and what I've seen of this art of exhibition, a very novel way, is to weave in these motifs in traditional art. And when that happens, when people start relating culture, spirituality with elements of sustainable development, it digs deep into the consciousness of a particular person, but ultimately it has the tendency to make him so disturbed about the entire thing that he feels necessary to sit up and actually take notice. And that, I think, is the merit of this particular set of paintings, this particular exhibition, which makes you think as to whether we are doing enough, as to whether we will ever do enough to stop this model which is clearly not sustainable. Where do the answers lie? That's not important. First, I have to ask myself the question as to what is the problem is. The merit of this exhibition is to tell somebody that there is a problem. It starts from there, the recognition of a problem, understanding what the problem is. As to how to tackle that problem, that will come about on its own. There are several ways of tackling a particular problem, provided one accepts that there is a problem and knows what the problem